Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. We are a people of diverse backgrounds, beliefs, theologies, ages, genders, abilities, bodies, and histories. But we are united across our differences by shared values and a dedication to our mission to build community, seek inspiration, inspire justice, and find peace. My name is Reverend Beth Monholland. My pronouns are she, hers, and along with our Associate Minister, Reverend Sally, I have the honor of serving as the lead minister of this congregation. I want to extend a special welcome to any guests who have joined us today, and I invite you to fill out a visitor's card so we can stay connected. And we have a lot of young people in the room today. Also, a lot of young at heart people, I do see you. But for all of our young people, we welcome your wiggles and your giggles, and we want you to know you are invited. Caretakers, your kids are invited to stay for the entire service, but we do have a religious education plan today. So after the time for all ages, this story time marked in your order of service, kids and all of our RE volunteers will be invited to go down to their classrooms. And everyone is invited for kinship and conversation after the service in Fellowship Hall. And at any point during the service, if you feel the need to stretch or you need more leg room or just want to get those wiggles out, you also are welcome to enjoy the service, which is live streamed into Fellowship Hall. And so it is also an exciting day, and we'll hear a little more after this, but immediately after a shortened fellowship hall today. We have a very exciting congregational meeting and very important vote, and so I hope everyone will stick around for that. Yeah, thank you, yes. Woo! Okay. Redefining scattered applause. I'm actually delighted to introduce our guest minister today, Reverend Martin Wolf. Reverend Martin has served as a Unitarian Universalist minister for 23 years and is the settled minister of the Abraham Lincoln UU congregation in Springfield. Martin was raised in the south suburbs of Chicago, which is White Sox country. It's okay. You are in good company. I know there's some Cubs fans. You all can fight it out later. And he studied creative writing and European history in college. His wife, Angela, is from Spain, and she has been working for the state of Illinois. They have one daughter, Celeste, who graduated from St. Louis University and who now lives in St. Louis. While in seminary, Martin worked at an emergency service shelter for abused and neglected youth. And after graduating from seminary, he and his wife moved into a group home for troubled teens. And Martin likes to call that his quote-unquote finishing school for ministry. Throughout his career, Martin has been very active with local interfaith groups and social justice efforts, especially related to promoting racial justice and LGBTQ issues. We're delighted to have Reverend Martin with us today, as Reverend Sally is the guest over at his congregation in Springfield, and so we're glad for the opportunity to be collegial with our sibling UU churches. And so now, we will begin officially our worship together by lighting our chalice as UUs across the country do. The chalice is one symbol of our shared living tradition, and it reminds us of the spark of life that connects us to all beings. Angie Urban will light our chalice, and Reverend Martin will share chalice lighting words with us.
Good morning. It is a season of long, soft shadows, some quite present, some more spiritual, some perhaps metaphorical. Across our lives, across this nation, there are heavy shadows in Nevada, and we mourn the loss of 3 professors who were slain this past week. We think of them, the faculty and students and their families, as we gather today to bring together our warmth, our commitment, our compassion, and embark once again upon a time of service and unity. As this chalice is lit today, I invite you, let us turn our thoughts towards the inner light within, and the light that we share with each other, your neighbors here, your neighbors out there. And let us contemplate how when we bring that light together, we share not only the light of illumination, but the warmth and the community that we create. And likewise, we create community in this space right now. I invite you to rise in body or in spirit, and let us join our voices in the opening hymn, number 224, Let Christmas Come.
Let Christmas come, its story told, when days are short and winds are cold. Let Christmas come, its lovely song, when evening's soon and night is long. Let Christmas come, its great star glow, on quiet Sid, deep arcs of snow. Let Christmas come, its stable gleam, love born again, the truth of dream.
For the time for all ages, it is my pleasure to introduce to you for the 100th time a grand old Unitarian saga called The Grinch Who Stole Christmas. I invite our youth to please come forward. And I see at least one other person is dressed appropriately for the occasion. Now, please. I believe that some of the words and perhaps the pictures will also be broadcast. Yes, indeed. So, but occasionally, I may hold up the book. You know this book. You know this story, right? How many of you have seen the cartoon? Raise your hands. How many of you have seen the movie? How many of you have read the book? A couple. As is often said, the book is better than the film. But How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Every Who down in Whoville liked Christmas a lot. But the Grinch, who lived just north of Whoville, did not. The Grinch hated Christmas, the whole Christmas season. Now, please don't ask why. No one quite knows the reason. It could, no. That's for fellowship hour. It could be his head wasn't screwed on quite right. It could be perhaps that his shoes were too tight. But I think that the most likely reason of all might have been that his heart was 2 sizes too small. But whatever the reason, his heart or his shoes, he stood there on Christmas Eve, hating the Whos, staring down from his cave with a sour, grinchy frown as the warm, lighted windows below in their town. For he knew every Who down in Whoville beneath was busy now, hanging a mistletoe wreath. And they're hanging their stockings, he snarled with a sneer. Tomorrow is Christmas, it's practically here. Then he growled with his Grinch fingers nervously drumming. I must find some way to stop Christmas from coming. For tomorrow, he knew, all the Who girls and boys would wake bright and early. They'd rush for their toys. And then, oh, the noise. Oh, the noise, 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 noise. That's one thing he hated. Noise, 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 noise. Then the Whos, young and old, would sit down to a feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, and they'd feast, 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 and feast. They would feast on Who pudding and rare Who roast beef, which was something the Grinch couldn't stand in the least. And then they'd do something he liked least of all. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, would stand close together with Christmas bells ringing. They'd stand hand in hand, and the Whos would start singing. They'd sing, and they'd sing, and they'd sing, 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 sing. And the more the Grinch thought of this Who Christmas sing, the more the Grinch thought, I must stop this thing. Why, for 53 years, I put up with it now. I must stop this Christmas from coming. But how? Then he got an idea. Any resemblance between the Grinch and myself is purely coincidental. He got an idea, an awful idea. The Grinch got a wonderful, awful idea. See what he looks like. I know just what to do. The Grinch laughed in his throat, and he made a quick Santa Claus hat and coat. And he chuckled and jumped. And what a great Grinchy trick. With this coat and this hat, I look just like St. Nick. All I need is a reindeer. The Grinch looked around, but since reindeer are scarce, there were none to be found. But did that stop the old Grinch? No. The Grinch simply said, if I can't find a reindeer, I'll make one instead. So he called his dog Max. Then he took some red thread and he tied a big horn on top of his head. Then he loaded some bags and some old empty sacks on a ramshackle sleigh as he hitched up old Max. Then the Grinch said, giddy up! And the sleigh started down towards the homes where the Who's lay a snooze in their town. All their windows were dark. Quiet snow filled the air. All the Who's were all dreaming, sweet dreams without care. When he came to the first little house on the square, this is stop number 1, the old Grinchy Claus hissed, and he climbed to the roof, empty bags in his fist. Then he slid down the chimney, a rather tight bench, but if Santa could do it, then so could the Grinch. He got stuck only once for a moment or two, then he stuck his head out of the fireplace flue, where the little Who stockings all hung in a row. Those stockings, he grinned, are the first things to go. Then he slithered and slunk with a smile most unpleasant around the whole room, and he took every present, pop guns and bicycles, roller skates, drums, checkerboards, tricycles, popcorn and plums, and he stuffed them in bags. Then the Grinch very nimbly stuffed all the bags one by one up the chimney. Then he slunk to the icebox. That's an old word for refrigerator. He took the Who's feast. He took the Who pudding. He took the roast beef. He cleaned out that icebox as quick in a flash. Why, that Grinch even took their last can of Who hash. Then he stuffed all the food up the chimney with glee. And now, grinned the Grinch, I will stuff up the tree. And the Grinch grabbed the tree and he started to shove when he heard a small sound like the coo of a dove. He turned around fast and he saw a little Who, little Cindy Lou who was not more than 2. The Grinch had been caught by this tiny Who daughter who got out of bed for a cup of cold water. She stared at the Grinch and said, Santa Claus, why? Why are you taking our Christmas tree? Why? But you know, that old Grinch was so smart and so slick, he thought up a lie, and he thought it up quick. Why, my sweet little tot, the fake Santa Claus lied. There's no light on this tree, there's a light on this tree that won't light on one side. So I'm taking it home to my workshop, my dear. I'll fix it up there. Then I'll bring it back here. And his fib fooled the child. Then he patted her head, and he got her a drink, and he sent her to bed. And when Cindy Lou Who went to bed with her cup, he went up the chimney and stuffed the tree up. Then the last thing he took was the log for the fire. Then he went up the chimney, himself the old liar. On their walls he left nothing but hooks and some wire. And one small speck of food that he left in the house was a crumb that was even too small for a mouse. Then he did the same thing to the other Who's houses, leaving crumbs much too small for the other Who's mouses. It was 1:15 dawn, all the Who's still abed, all the Who's still a snooze, when he packed up his sled, packed it up with their presents, the ribbons, the wrappings, the tags and the tinsel, the trimmings, the trappings. 3,000 feet up the site of Mount Crumpet, he rode with his load to the tip-top to dump it. Pooh, pooh to the Who's, he was Grinchishly humming. They're finding out now that no Christmas is coming. They're just waking up. I know just what they'll do. Their mouths will hang open a minute or two. Then the Who's down in Whoville will all cry, boo-hoo. That's a noise, grinned the Grinch, that I simply must hear. So he paused, and the Grinch put his hand to his ear, and he did hear a sound rising over the snow. It started out low, and then it started to grow. But this sound wasn't sad. Why, this sound sounded merry. It couldn't be so, but it was merry, very. And he stared down at Whoville. The Grinch popped his eyes. Then he shook. What he saw was a shocking surprise. Every Who down in Whoville, the tall and the small, was singing without any presents at all. He hadn't stopped Christmas from coming. It came. Somehow or other, it came just the same. And the Grinch, with his Grinch feet ice cold in the snow, stood puzzling and puzzling. How could it be so? It came without ribbons. It came without tags. It came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, means a little bit more. And what happened then? Well, in Whoville, they say that the Grinch's small heart grew 3 sizes that day. And the minute his heart didn't feel quite so tight, he whizzed with his load through the bright morning light, and he brought back the toys and the food for the feast. And he himself, the Grinch, carved the roast beef. A story by Dr. Seuss. He wrote that book too. He wrote a lot of books. He was really, really good. So, to remember this moment, would anyone like to take this with? Someone? Well, you got it. So that you can remember this moment in the story in the spirit of a Grinch transformed, a Christmas story. And so I thank you all for listening and for enjoying our visuals. And now the youth may now depart with their religious educators.
Good morning. That was so much fun to hear a nice story like that in the morning. So I'm Angie Urban. One key part of our mission is to build community. And we do that not only through our rituals and our shared spiritual practices, but also through the many programs and activities that nurture this community. There are many opportunities to connect within these walls and beyond it. And I encourage you all to read our weekly e-news for upcoming events and programs, especially all of the many events taking place in this holiday season. But this morning, I want to highlight a very important event. Our special congregational meeting and vote for the Ramp Up Project is today, right after the service. Please, everyone, grab a treat after the service and then return to the sanctuary for the meeting and the vote. For those joining us online, check your email to join virtually. Also, for those with childcare needs, we'll have the little ones downstairs, and there will also be volunteers available in the fellowship hall with activities for the older ones. We're excited for this opportunity to increase our accessibility. Okay, sorry. We're going right into this. We're grateful for the generosity of time and energy that has gone into this project,
And that indeed goes into the life of the church this week. Our mission is made possible through the generosity of our members and friends, and we know that our work within this congregation is strengthened by our connections to the wider community. To live into this spiritual practice of interdependence, we share a portion of all non-designated offering funds each week with an organization whose values align with ours. In the month of December, as is our custom, we share our offering with our international partnership churches. The ushers will pass the offering plates during our next song, which will be sung by our fabulous choir. You can drop a donation in the offering plate, and since it's the 21st century, you're also welcome to give online if that is more convenient for you. And if you have a written joy or sorrow, you are welcome to pass along that to one of the ushers, and they will bring that forward. With gratitude and appreciation, the offering will now be gratefully received.
In late 1914, just a few months after World War I broke out in Europe, British and German soldiers, numbering in the tens of thousands, came together on December 24th, having agreed to an unofficial truce marking the special time of year that was dear to all who were on the battlefield, far from their homes and their families. Eyewitness accounts tell us that carols such as Franz Gruber's Stille Nacht, Silent Night, were sung, seasonal greetings in several languages rang out across the trenches, and simple gifts of food and memorabilia were exchanged. In that one brief and beautiful moment, the human spirit triumphed. Fighting ceased, and the world was at peace.
We know that as a community, we each bring with us both joys and sorrows when we gather. Practicing our interdependence, we share those joys and sorrows with each other, knowing that in sharing, our sorrows may be easier to carry and our joys more abundant. If you have a joy or a sorrow you want to publicly share today, I invite you to complete a card, which you will find in the pew, or the ushers will bring one to you. You can also pull out your phones if you're in the room or online and submit it to joysandsorrows@uucuc.org. In this moment, we will sing together our blessing song, May the Longtime Sun, and we invite you, if you are moved to do so, to come to the front during the song and drop a stone for your sorrow or a petal for your joys in the water bowl on our chalice table.
May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure, pure light that's within you guide your way home. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure, pure light that's within you guide your way home. The long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure, pure light that's within you guide your way home. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure, pure light that's within you guide your way home. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure, pure light that's within you guide your way home.
Thank you to everyone here in body and spirit for making space, sharing our joys and sorrows together. A joy from Christine Cahill. After being sleepless in Savoy for 4 months, I am happy to report I have slept without sleep medicine, which only gave me 6 hours of sleep. I have slept 9 nights without them. Getting 7 to 8 hours of sleep, I finally feel human. Sorrow from Todd Kinney. My mother passed away peacefully Thursday evening, 100 years old and cheerful to the end. Joy on that part. Our entire family will miss her positive outlook on life. 100 is amazing. A joy from Janet Ravel Barrett. So happy to be home. My ex-husband Mark will return to his home sometime this week to continue to recover from encephalitis. My family is beyond grateful. What is with you? A joy from Marcia Clenard. A joy to sing in yesterday's Christmas concert, along with 13 other UUs in the chorale, plus one UU in the Urbana High School choir.
Thank you, Angie. We do have a few that folks submitted electronically, and I'll start with a joy from Julie Lout, who shares that she and Jules and Celia are thrilled that Julie's parents are moving into their new home in Urbana on Thursday. The family is excited to get to be together. A sorrow from Maureen, who, I think with many of us, is grieving the ongoing murder of thousands of Palestinians in the name of settler colonialism. And a joy from Kate, who says that the doctors are fairly certain that the lump in my daughter's breast is just a very dense but healthy lump of breast tissue, and they will know for certain on Monday. We're saying a prayer. For these joys and sorrows that we have spoken aloud, and for the ones that we are always carrying in our hearts, we are grateful for this community for making space. And I would like to invite us now into just a moment of meditative silence together. I'll ring our singing bowl to begin that silence, and we'll ring it again for the silence to end.
Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul. Comfort me, comfort me, comfort me, oh my soul.
It is a rare treat to be back here with you, and I bring you greetings of over 350 Unitarian Universalist members and friends in Springfield, Illinois, and I convey those to you this holiday season. And this season, these weeks, are crowded with holidays and holy days from different traditions. But today I want to focus on one particular tradition, the one that is called Christmas. If I were to ask you to close your eyes and visualize, what were some of the precious memories of your life around this time of year? If you and your family celebrated Christmas, what were those memories? What were the colors, the sights, the sounds? Who was present? If I were to also ask you, can you imagine what would have been the golden age of Christmas, at least as we recognize it? When would that have taken place? Open your eyes. Let me get my water. The children have left, so those who would fancy certain associations with the season, such as the Grinch, Frosty the Snowman, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, they're in a different room, probably. But perhaps some of you remember crooners like Bing Crosby, Irving Berlin, and his work. Perhaps those of a younger generation remember the Ronettes, and perhaps even Mariah Carey. She has something to say about this season. But I'm going to ask you for a moment to consider further back in time, far beyond our present generation. Imagine, if you will, what Christmas must have been like in the 1600s. You've read about it. You've heard about the Puritans in Old England and New England and how they absolutely hated Christmas. They might have been the prototype for the Grinch. There was one divine in England who once declared that there were more sins committed during the 12 days of Christmas than the 12 months besides. And you might ask, why did the Puritans despise Christmas so? One answer is that they read their Bibles and they knew that it is not scripturally warranted to dedicate one day, specifically December 25th, as the birthday of Jesus. They knew that. Likewise, there are Puritans in different guises today who know the same thing. Well, if you wish them a Merry Christmas, or worse, Happy Holidays, they will snarl at you and say, it's not in your Bible, read your Bible. Such people have existed, do exist. And in Old England, during Cromwell's era, in New England, Christmas was actually banned. And if you worked on Christmas Day, it was sure sign that you were a shirker and you were to be punished for that particular sin and crime. Christmas was forbidden. They had their reasons. Part of it was because of Scripture, but they also understood that Christmas arrives following the conclusion of the agricultural season. The crops have been harvested. Beer has been fermented. Livestock has been slaughtered, typically on St. Martin's Day, November 11th. So there's beer, there's wine, there's lots of food. And so all the classic sins of drunkenness and gluttony, fornication, all began to happen when idle hands had nothing else to do. And the preachers and the dear old Puritans despised this time of year because there just wasn't enough work for people to do. And they kept finding themselves going into mischief. And there were some terrible things that really did happen that people used to do. Some of the relics of that bygone era include the fact that some people shoot their firearms into the evening sky between Christmas and New Year's. That's an old, old tradition. Perhaps, like me, you've already received Christmas cards in the mail attached to your recycling bin as well as your garbage. And you're expected to tip the people who come to your house and provide services. That's an old English tradition of the manor lord and how they treated their serfs and staff. Just a few. And so it really was a difficult time of year, especially for people in Northern Europe, especially people who were Protestant, because there just wasn't enough work to keep people busy. So what do? You ban it, of course. Simplest thing. And in spite of that ban, while the United States and while England were agricultural and rural, things did not improve. And things only got worse during the early industrial era, because now children are working, women and men are working, drunkenness is on the increase, And it was a terrible time in society. And people said, what can we do? And so there were several individuals who wanted to reinvent Christmas. And you've heard of them. Clement Moore, who wrote a poem called The Night Before Christmas. 'Twas the night before Christmas, and all through the house, not a creature was stirring, not even a mouse. You know this, and actually became an international blockbuster. I have gone through the archives of the papers in Sangamon County and found rip-offs of that poem published in the 1830s. It was extremely popular and often reprinted without attribution. But that particular poem gave us the idea of connecting Santa Claus, St. Nicholas, as one and the same, and reinventing St. Nicholas, Bishop of Myra, into a benevolent being who actually in the story is an elf, tiny little thing, who could go down your chimneys, and Christmas trees hadn't really been invented for white Protestants, and putting presents in stockings by the chimney. Clement Moore. The other industrious writer was Washington Irving, who wrote Knickerbocker's History of New York and the sketchbook. And so he took the idea of St. Nicholas and he invented the story and embellished it about the Dutch in New Amsterdam and completely reinvented the story of this benevolent stranger who comes into your house at night and leaves presents, at least if you've been good, coal if you've been bad. And so it was that those two literary masterpieces began to affect the public imagination. And then, very quickly, some Unitarians decided to take it one step further. The most prominent Unitarian was Charles Dickens. I have watched so many versions of Christmas Carol or Scrooge, and I've begun to notice that every time the story is retold, his profession changes. And the most recent one is more of a capitalist who crushes the lives out of his workers and is responsible for the deaths of miners. But in the original telling, he owns a warehouse. And his clerk, Bob Cratchit, becomes a very sympathetic character. Now, it doesn't matter which version is your favorite, 1951 Alistair Sims, but that particular story was transformational in Victorian England and in these United States. It was released, and it was the first of 6 Christmas stories that Charles Dickens released. And the first one, A Christmas Carol, was an international blockbuster. Sadly, he didn't profit much from it because everyone stole the idea, and there were knockoff stories and plays being performed all over Europe and then in these United States, stealing his intellectual property and presenting it and receiving all the money. But what A Christmas Carol did is it chose Christmas Eve and said, this is the Holy of Holy, an evening when magic happens. And in that sense, really connects with Saturnalia, Mithras, and some of the older Yule tidings. And said something magical takes place on Christmas Eve. And in A Christmas Carol, they don't mention Jesus. They really don't talk about a Trinity at all. They don't really mention God, except God bless us everyone. Thank you, Tiny Tim. It is a story about the spirit of the season and how it becomes incarnate on this magical evening, accompanied by a ghost. And the ghost and 3 spirits that personify Christmas past, present, and future transform the old sinner Ebenezer Scrooge and awaken in him compassion. And it's compassion that saves him. Not an affirmation or a creed, simply remembering who he used to be and expanding the circle of his compassion to embrace not just those closest to him, but strangers as well. An extraordinary story. And it also sparked a surge in charitable giving in England and then in these United States. It really wasn't part of the Christmas culture. You took care of your own. Maybe you had presents for your loved ones, maybe for those who worked for you. But the idea that you would set aside significant sums of money and support those who are homeless, those who are sick or in prison, was not part of the Christmas canon until Charles Dickens said, maybe it should be. So Charles Dickens is the man who reimagined and reinvented Christmas. And it's really what we do now is in large part an extension of the work that he did. Thank you, Charles Dickens. But he was not alone in his efforts. Little Women, Louise May Alcott, her story about the Marsh sisters and their family is focused so much around Christmas. It was published immediately following the American Civil War, and it's Christmas, which is a time of magic and reunion and being grateful for what you have, and a celebration of the different generations that continued to plant further seeds in the public's imagination. Note that both these examples are literary. Christmas, as we experience it today, was a literary revolution in England and these United States. What's another example? Many of the songs that we will sing were composed by Unitarians. We have sung, or at least heard one of them this evening, Jingle Bells, which was first performed in a Unitarian church prior to the Civil War, and now it's everywhere. The story of Santa Claus received further attention at the hands of Unitarian Thomas Nast. Thomas Nast, who had immigrated from Germany, became a Unitarian here, and as I mentioned, the idea of Santa Claus as an elf was introduced to the American imagination several decades before, but Thomas Nast took the idea, and Santa Claus became the patron saint of the Union troops during the Civil War. And he appeared on Christmas Eve, bringing gifts and food for the famished troops. He did not make it south of the Mason-Dixon line. He seemed to favor, and he was rather a shabby character. But following the war, Thomas Nast continued to revisit that idea. And as Thomas Nast became more successful and his girth increased, the girth of Santa Claus increased. And the things that we associate with Santa Claus, and some of the were inventions of Thomas Nast. What else? Christmas trees. It is true that German Lutherans, following the inspiration of Martin Luther, did celebrate the notion of Christmas trees. The story is that one day Martin Luther was outside, walking through the woods. He saw a tree, a fir tree, that seemed engulfed in flames. It was the sunlight breaking through, and he suggested to his followers, this is a very good idea. Now, I don't know that it's always a good idea to light candles in a tree inside, but Lutherans brought that tradition when they emigrated to these United States. But one tradition did not necessarily jump from one ethnic community into the wider stream of popular culture, certainly not amongst the Anglicans, the Episcopalians, and the Unitarians who dominated the cultural life of these United States for the first 50 years of its existence. So what happened? There was a German immigrant who came to these United States, Charles Follen. He left Germany, he came to New England, he got a job at Harvard. He was removed from his position at Harvard because he was an extremist on abolition. He believed that African Americans should not be enslaved on this continent, and he agitated for that change. And because of that, he became unacceptable to Harvard College. So he was removed, and he fell on very hard times. But one of his friends was Harry Martineau, English Unitarian, who traveled to these United States, and as many travelers in that era used to do, they kept copious notes in a journal and later published them. either in magazine form or in a book, and supplemented their income. And Harriet Martineau was a close personal friend of the fallen family. And so she writes about an encounter at this home. And she doesn't acknowledge or she doesn't reveal that he was an abolitionist, also that he was an advocate that children should have a happy childhood and not have to go to the mills, and that she shared those same sympathies. But she describes an occasion in their house when the adults go into one room, close the parlor doors, and the children are outside nervously awaiting, what are these grown-ups up to? And then at the appointed hour, the doors are open, the children come in, and there's a tree inside with candle lights and gifts hanging from different bows. And the children squeal with delight. And Harriet Martineau writes this all up, publishes it, and it becomes a sensation, both in these United States and also in her native England. This is several decades before a young Queen Victoria and Prince Albert brought his German tradition of bringing a Christmas tree into the royal house, cementing the idea that fir trees and Christmas are synonymous, that you can't have one without the other. This is all 19th century stuff. History. I could talk history for a long time. I love it. But I want to bring us fast forward into the 20th century. The 20th century has been marked by many things, including horrific warfare. The First World War, the Second World War. And it was following the Second World War when the United States became a superpower. And not only a military superpower, but an economic superpower. And a number of people who began to notice and decry commercialism around this time of year became extraordinarily loud. It was so easy to mass produce gifts, and commercials in the newspapers, on the television, radio, encourage people, if you love someone, go buy them this product. And of course, people had money in their pockets more often than not, and they rushed to the stores, department stores flourished, Santa Claus has appeared in the department stores, so forth and so on, and it became a cyclone, a Santa and seasonal cyclone of commercialism. Some people noticed and said, this is not right. One of them was Dr. Seuss, who published his book, which I read earlier, The Grinch Who Stole Christmas, which is a cautionary tale, which really borrows heavily from A Christmas Carol, and says he noticed that there are some individuals who become very sour about the season. Maybe they're feeling isolated. Maybe they've been disowned by their family. Maybe their family has perished. Maybe they're sick. But for whatever reason, many people have turned against the spirit of the season. And so he wanted to catch them young. And so he wrote this story for children. And as he said, speaking of the Grinch, it came without ribbons, it came without tags, it came without packages, boxes, or bags. And he puzzled 3 hours till his puzzler was sore. Then the Grinch thought of something he hadn't before. Maybe Christmas, he thought, doesn't come from a store. Maybe Christmas, perhaps, is a little bit more. And this is so similar in spirit to the conversation between Scrooge and his nephew, Fred, where they're talking about the spirit of Christmas. Merry Christmas, Uncle. Bah, humbug. What reason have you to be so dismal against Christmas? What reason have you to be so merry? You're poor enough. And then Fred gives the most remarkable monologue about Christmas, and I'll see if I can find it in my notes. He says, even though Christmas has not added any to my wealth, it seems to be the one time of year, as if by common consent, all people are filled with a sense of charity, and we recognize that we are all common companions on the same pathway. And therefore, even though it has not enriched me personally, I say, God bless it, and God bless you, Uncle. Bah, humbug. But it's that spirit which continues to reverberate this time of year, which continues to be reinvented. One of the individuals who I watched as a youngster was another Unitarian, Rod Serling, The Twilight Zone. Rod Serling was born on Christmas Day, 1924. He loved Christmas. And if you look at some of the episodes, in particular, The Night of the Meek, Art Carney portrays a washed-out Santa Claus. You see a short homily about the saving grace of the season and the magic of that evening, and how even people who never utter the name of Jesus or Yashu can be transformed by that magic. It's a magic that if we accept it and run with it, we too can transform ourselves and the society around us. Each generation has an invitation to revisit and to reinvent Christmas. If you keep Christmas in your heart and in your households, perhaps there are some traditions that have been handed down to you. Perhaps you've married and you've gained other habits. Perhaps you hand those down to the next generation, and they in their turn go away what they want to keep some, pass some away. But Christmas is an invitation, and it's always being reinvented, and it's something extraordinary. And I predict that as we continue on in life, and the next generation rises, and the next generation after that, Christmas will continue to be transformed and to evolve. I don't keep real trees in my house. I think that the rising generation will gravitate more towards artificial trees rather than cutting down trees. I think that the next generation will plant trees on Christmas to celebrate the season of life and living. I believe that the lights that we now plug into electricity will be powered by solar panels. I believe that if you keep stockings, the gifts will largely be coming from fair trade. I believe that new stories and new songs will continue to be written and will become celebrated, and that either through TikTok or television, those stories will circle the globe and will transform societies such as my wife's Spain, that has no real history of Santa Claus and no special emphasis on Christmas Eve, let alone Christmas, and continue to shift cultural awareness about the spirits of the season. I believe also that there will be more group songs like Don't They Know It's Christmas and We Are the World that will raise money to address refugees and the homeless and the hungry. And that as we continue to go further into this 21st century, and with the epidemic of problems arising from global warming and climate change, there will be more need to raise money and to be compassionate and charitable. I believe that there will be many more holiday songs, and I will offer two. You can jot these down and you can run with it. One such new Christmas carol, I think, should really go along to the tune of another, but it should be entitled, I'm Dreaming of Dismantling White Supremacy Culture. And another song, which I actually might do something with, and I will offer this to Mariah Carey and offer to split the profits. All I want for Christmas is you. So in that spirit, Feliz Navidad, Joy Noel, a Merry Christmas, and a Happy Season to each and all. The closing song is number 244 in your hymnals. It Came Upon the Midnight Clear, also written by a Unitarian, and a very poignant set of lyrics. So please notice those lyrics. Please rise in body or in spirit.
It came upon a midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch the peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above its sad and lonely plains, they bend on hovering wing, and ever o'er its babel sounds the blessed angels sing. But with the woes of war and strife, the world has suffered long. Beneath the angel strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong. And we who fight the wars hear not the love song which they bring. Oh, hush the noise of battle strife, and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hastening on, by prophet bards foretold, when with the ever-circling years come round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth its ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing.
Our time together is drawing to a close. We will resume our lives in normal time. But there is certainly something extraordinary about the spirit of the season and the coming together of so many spirits and the love and compassion of this assembly. And though the light may be extinguished, remember that the light continues with you, and take that with you into the highways and the byways. And remember to share it with those you meet. But most importantly, remember this. It is not the lack of light that kills. It is the lack of warmth. Amen and blessed be.
Thank you, Juan. Thank you, Reverend Martin. Everybody, just a quick reminder that in less than half an hour, we will gather back in here. Or if you need to go home, remember you can join us online. Just check your email. All voting members members who've been here, been members at least 10 days, get to vote. Everybody come and vote. So you've got about 15, 20 minutes to attend to your body's needs out in Fellowship Hall, and then start to regather for our very important congregational meeting. Thanks, everyone.